Hey folks, my name is David Thomas Tao. I'm a contributor for VinePair, and today we are looking at one of the most exciting new American whiskey releases in 2023, and that is Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. It is the first age-stated bourbon from Maker's Mark. It's a blend of 11 and 12-year-old bourbon whiskey, and it's what fans have been asking for a long time. That's older Maker's Mark, age-stated Maker's Mark, higher proof Maker's Mark. We're going to get into its taste, its impact, its price, availability, all of that. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to VinePair on YouTube, that's what you're watching right now, for the latest and greatest in all things spirits, wine, beer, and more, including my whiskey reviews. And if you want my full written review on Maker's Mark Cellar Aged, one of the first ever released about this expression, make sure to check out the link in the description below. All right, Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. It is a blend of an 11 and 12-year-old bourbon whiskey. Now, Maker's Mark is known for their wheated mash bill. They don't use any rye in their mash bill. This is a blend of 13% 11-year-old whiskey and 87% 12-year-old whiskey. So the age statement, if they actually put one on here, would be 11 because it has to be the youngest whiskey in the blend. Makers did something really interesting with this. After about 5 or 6 years, they took barrels that were aging in their normal warehouses and they put them in a limestone cellar that they've carved into the side of a mountain in Kentucky, in Loretto, Kentucky. Yeah, it's kind of really a big hill, not a mountain. What that did was slow down the aging process. Now, that cellar stays at the same cool temperature year round. And it got to the point where after an additional 5 or 6 years of that aging, they were really happy with the product. They blended it and released it, and that gets us Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. It officially drops in September 2023. The suggested retail price is $150. There are 20,000 bottles being released in the United States and about 10,000 bottles being released in the international markets. As one of the first people to taste test and review this whiskey, I'll say right now, they have a lot to be proud of here. This whiskey is robust. It is rich. It has depth and character. It's got fruit and sweetness galore. And outside of a few select single barrels I've tried from the Maker's Barrel Select program, and those are always going to be different, this is probably the best wide release Maker's Mark I've ever sipped. It clocks in at 115.7 proof, and it really drinks below that. So if you're worried about this being hot, if you're worried about this being tough to drink, you can always add a little bit of water, which does open up this whiskey, but don't let that proof scare you off. Makers has accomplished something pretty extraordinary here. Now, they plan for this to be an annual release, which means the 2023 version of Maker's Mark Cellar Aged is just the first in what will hopefully be a line of aged expressions, age labeled since they didn't truly age state it, maybe? Aged expressions or older expressions from Maker's Mark, and I'm curious to see how the blend evolves in the coming years. Again, it's 13% 11-year-old whiskey, 87% 12-year-old whiskey. Will those ages get older as more stock ages in that limestone-lined warehouse? We don't really know right now, and they're keeping their mouths shut. In fact, they might not have the blend ready for next year. Let's talk about a few tasting notes here. And again, if you want my full tasting notes, including what I thought about the nose, the palate, and the finish on the whiskey, check out the full review at the link below. I go into a lot of detail, but a few tasting notes that stick out. Rich, dark caramel, gourmet chocolate, rich fruit, including baked berries and apricots. And there's also nuttiness to this whiskey. It's got some spice, but it doesn't have a lot of astringency. Now, this isn't a perfect bourbon whiskey. I have rated things higher than this, but for a first of its kind expression from a major bourbon producer, this is as close to a home run as I've seen come through pretty recently. The bottles are dropping right now. I'm recording this in September 2023, and if you find this on the shelf for close to its suggested retail of $150, my suggestion is to consider grabbing it. It's a fun whiskey to share with friends. It's historic, and if you're a fan of Maker's Mark, this is definitely a must try. It's unlike anything they've released in recent memory. Well, I want to know what you think of Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. Will you be chasing a bottle? Have you gotten to try it? What do you think of some of Maker's Mark's other recent expressions? I'm curious. Please let me know in the comments below. And until then, I'm David Thomas Tao. Thanks for watching.